Let's move on now and talk about a topic which I'm sure is something that will interest all of you who are owners of a medium, small or micro business or enterprise. Succession planning. I'm sure this is something that you may not have thought of recently because you're busy fighting the fires that COVID may have created in terms of your business, the problems it may have created, cash flow problems, so on and so forth. But unfortunately, you have to take into consideration that given the way the wave has spread, it does bring about uncertainty for you as well in terms of your own health, and that in turn puts a question mark on your business too. How do you ensure continuity of all the hard work that you have put in the last many decades and ensure that the strategy, the vision that you have in mind is taken forward? And for the other members of your family as well who may be a partner with you in this business, it's equally important for them as well to have some sort of stability and continuity in the business even after you may have passed on. And all of these reasons, well, more than these, but these are just some of the reasons why succession planning assumes importance. To talk about this topic, I have someone very important, someone who has discussed this quite often in the past, Mr. Sandeep Bhatnagar. He's the director for MNBD, National Institution for Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises. Sandeep, really appreciate you giving us your time today on ET Now. Thank you so much. To start with, Sandeep, how often, I remember you recently conducted a webinar as well on this topic. Have you really, seen MSMEs put this succession planning topic at the forefront? To what extent do small businesses, especially which may be semi-organized, tend to put this in the forefront, or do they usually, ignore this or put it in the back burner?
Thank you. It's a pleasure. As you know that most of the MSMEs are promoter driven, and they are founded and built their businesses without thinking of a disruption that will jeopardize their own functioning. So most of them put their business into a kind of a risk by ignoring the fact that any disruption can happen in future. So most of the businesses have been founded on a good thought, but that risk part is usually missing in most of the planning, which is done by most of the founders. Yeah.
Okay, well, when it's a big corporate, you'll always usually have a plan in place, and in fact, shareholders appreciate that as well. But when it's a closely run ship, a family-run ship, this topic does tend to get ignored. But Sandeep, tell our viewers, and I'm sure many of them are small business owners, why does it assume importance, especially amidst the health crisis that we are in the midst of right now?
Yes, succession planning is very important today in the current scenario because it will mitigate the risk which is associated with the business in terms of the disruption that might happen in future, that will jeopardize the functioning of the owner himself. So succession planning in that term is actually associated with finding and developing of the principal successors, or, it might be any of the employees that are essential for the business function or the business continuity purpose. So it assumes that much significance because for a business continuity, a principal successors should be in place, whether are they employees or whether they are in a family business, either case. Yeah.
Okay. Most MSMEs are family-run businesses. There are several family members involved, and when the business grows and it continues, the family as well adds on new members. What are the complications then in such a situation that could arise on the event of the passing away of the head of the family, ergo the head of the business, without a proper succession plan?
Okay, we must understand a scenario because most of the MSMEs, the micro, small, and medium enterprises, are generally working. They're most of the times are self-employed persons that operate in semi-formal or informal sectors, and they are the one of the hardest. They are the hit hardest by this economic fallout of the pandemic, which is there globally. So unprecedented measures which have been taken of late, for to contain the spread of pandemic, the virus has resulted in a massive, I would say, the massive supply chain disruptions, and also there is a colossal drop in the demand, ubiquitously. You can see that in almost all the sectors world over. So, and according to the figures, which is if you see the figures by World Bank and UN also, United Nations, you will find that 7 out of 10 jobs are provided by these SMEs in the emerging markets. And also the contribution of MSMEs is around 50% to the GDP and 70% to the total employment worldwide. So assuming that kind of a significance MSMEs have today, whether they are family business or they are small enterprises, the owner of the MSMEs needs to understand that and most of them, interestingly, most of the owners are don't have a formal HR or management education today, and whatever they have learned is tacit. So tacit knowledge, and that is also largely gained through informal training. So the need of the hour is to understand the importance of tacit knowledge of MSMEs. And these tacit knowledge of the owners or the managers should be considered as the vital strategic, I would say, the asset of the business. So other than assets, this kind of a tacit knowledge is actually, I would reinforce, it's a vital strategic asset for any MSME. So in this regard, the succession planning becomes very important, because anything happens to any of the founders or the the owners, that tacit knowledge goes for a toss, or that that gets MSMEs are caught off guard, which they're not prepared of. So that's what the importance of succession planning is.
What about the whole emotional process as well involved? I mean, if you have a business and you have 5 individuals not related to you, simply employ them, it sometimes gets to be easy as well, because it's bereft of emotions, and you simply look at the person with the most talent and somebody whose vision is most in line with you. Do you think that when it's a family managed, family operated business, it becomes trickier for the owner? How important is it for the owner to be detached from emotions when choosing the heir apparent, if you could call it that?
We must understand that owners or the managers of any MSME should consider or should link succession planning with their core business strategy, and with the help of which they would be able to develop or recruit the right kind of needed talent in future. Because the entire process of succession planning involves a rational mindset, because we should move above the emotional mindset to a rational mindset, because it will involve a phase where there is an anticipation of worst case scenario. People need to sit down together, think of what is the possible worst case scenario, and classify and recruit the potential employees or successors based on the outcome. And then there is a phase when there is a mapping of career motives of the potential successors are done. And as a result of all this process, they understand how to employ the knowledge management tools. They will employ a knowledge management tools to transfer the knowledge, the tacit knowledge, the asset of the knowledge, asset of the organization to the successor. So the entire process becomes more of rational minded, and the whole process is involved in succession planning as such.
Okay. All right. Well, fair enough. That's, of course, the view coming in then on succession planning, especially for family members. When does it become necessary, according to you, Sandeep, to bring an outsider to manage or run a largely family-run shop? When does it become necessary as well?
What I feel, the succession planning should be a part of human resource planning, right? Integrated with their overall business plan, right from the stage of when a business sets, it becomes a startup, and you starts up a business. So right from that stage, it should be a integral part of it. But for MSMEs, when the business is in a growth phase, then it becomes indispensable. There needs to be an enterprise, they must think that now the enterprise need to have a formal HRD infrastructure in place, and training and development needs to be carried out by the specialists or the experts. At that stage, I feel it is very necessary for an MSME to employ the outside experts and drive the business into the unfamiliar areas. So at that stage, I would think it is much necessary.
Okay. Just as we wrap up this conversation, Sandeep, according to you, what are the features of a good succession plan? Do you think that one should take, the consultation of perhaps a legal, a family lawyer? What exactly are the features? How should one go about it?
I would say, an effective succession plan or a succession planning strategy will address the three areas. First is the alignment of workforce management with the prudent business strategy. Prudent should be, it should be foresighted in nature and should be able to withstand any disruption. Second most important thing is to identify and manage both internal and external talents through through recruitment, through retention, and through transfer of strategic knowledge assets. So this is the important thing for a succession plan to be there. And lastly, and most important is the continuous evaluation and monitoring the dynamic macro environment. So a continuous evaluation is done because nobody foresighted this pandemic, right? It happened. So it's like a continuous evaluation and monitoring. So these are the three key parts in a succession plan, which should be, thought of.
Okay, well, yes, all of these are necessary features that all individuals can consider, and they can sort of put in place. It's important though, however, that you don't push it back, that you should absolutely not avoid it. It may be a topic that's uncomfortable, it's something that you would like to avoid as well. However, unfortunately, it's the need of the hour, and it's important that one goes about with succession planning. Sandeep, just one last question before I let you go, and that is that right now, and since you are, of course, you've been speaking to a lot of MSMEs as well, you've constantly been in touch with them, you are, of course, deeply involved in this as an industry. How has the last 1 year been for the segment? What have been the most common problems that MSMEs have and their owners or their managers have spoken to you about in the last 1 year, and how have they tried to overcome those challenges?
See, I've spoken to a number of MSMEs, and most of them have felt the burn. Although there are segments like agriculture, MSMEs engaged in agriculture, they do feel the business have doubled, but most of the MSMEs have been really affected. As I told, either is a drop in the demand or is the massive, which seen a supply chain disruptions have happened. So most of them have suffered some or the other way. But I would feel all of them need to be adequately trained on entrepreneurship, because most of them, after discussion with them, I feel most of them don't have a formal HRD or management education, and hence the training which they also give to their staff or the development is, if at all it is done by owner or manager himself. So training of a owner or training of the promoter becomes all the more important in any ways. And what I see entrepreneurship is always about three kind of education is there, which generally we focus on. First is for education, the other is about education, and one is in education. So about education talks about, more of creation of awareness about entrepreneurship role, right? For education talks about, deals with building of capabilities of the aspiring entrepreneurs. And in education, which is very interesting, in education concentrates on the development of the existing entrepreneurs which are within the firms. So that is very important today. After discussing with MSMEs, I feel they need to develop, the manpower which is within their organizations, beyond their family circles, without becoming emotional. They should look into the existing staff, how to develop their skills, how to transfer the tacit knowledge to them, so that in case anything happens, the business continues. They continue to earn, whatever they were earning without having, compromising their business. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think we sometimes really hesitate to bring in a professional who may be well qualified to take on board certain challenges that you may have perhaps not faced in the past, like for example coronavirus, and he may be better adept on how to tide over your business as well over a crisis. Well, Sandeep, on that note, we leave it at that. Really appreciate you taking our time and joining us today on the Money Show to talk about this often ignored but extremely important topic on succession planning, especially for small business owners.